Hello everybody, I'm Marina Lostetter. Today I'm going to read to you from The Helm of Midnight, which is my new epic fantasy novel coming out tomorrow. This is the one that's Hannibal meets Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn, with serial killers and monsters and mayhem and enchanted masks and all sorts of hidden history. I'm going to start reading right at the beginning, so there's no backstory you need to know, so let's jump right in. The night pressed against the conservatory's windows like a wall of water, humid and thick. Looking out into the blackness, Krona felt squeezed, pressured, as though one careless tap on the pretty green glass would cause it to crack and shatter, allowing the night to rush in, smothering partygoers and servants alike. But the quartet played a joyful tune, and smiles flashed all around. She let herself sway in time to the music while scanning the room's rear left quadrant for suspicious behavior. Tonight's celebration was in honor of the Chief Magistrate's Silver Jubilee. He was the head of all security divisions in the city-state of Lostetter, from the food inspectors all the way up through the ranks of the Watch to the Regulators, the Martinets, and of course the Marconian Guard. 12 articles of enchantment, each taken into custody during the Chief Magistrate's tenure, and typically hidden away in the city-state's vaults, were on display. Krona carefully wove her way through the tall cases. The sampling of contraband included 1 syringe, 5 masks, 3 necklaces, 1 brooch, 1 poorly blown glass globe, and 1 bronze penknife. All seemingly normal items. All incredibly dangerous. 6 regulators had been assigned to the collection security, and Krona had been excited for the opportunity. Though she was accustomed to field work, 3 years and counting, she was the newest member of this team, under the direction of Captain Louis Hirvath, her older sister, and the reason why she often dropped the familial "day" in her name. Delia's team was well respected, often given the most high-profile concerns. The glass shell sculpted to fit over Krona's ear vibrated. "I don't like the look of that man in red," came Trey's voice in her helm. Sucking on an enchanted reverb bead allowed the regulators to communicate with each other at a distance, and without being overheard. Trey stood nearest the door, observing as each guest showed the doorman their invitation. "This is a party," he continued. "Red, it's unseemly." Tan and gray and white and brown swirled around the room in vivacious synchronicity. The crowd was spotted through with figures in black, such as Krona, but a lone man in crimson strolled through the throngs of nobility. His mourning suit screamed out for attention like a swath of blood on a white child's knee. The path he cut indicated his goal was the exhibit. Too conspicuous for trouble, Krona thought. Looking out, she caught the reverb bead where it dangled on a thread near her lips and drew it under her tongue. "I'll keep watch on him," she said before spitting the bead out again. "Call if you need assistance," Ryu said from the other side of the massive room. Z and Sasha passed each other, patrolling the perimeter. As he drew nearer to Krona, the man's features resolved. The light brown of his face was made darker by the circles around his eyes and the sunkenness of his cheeks. He was perhaps 30, 35, and would have been handsome if not for the deep gloom about him. Though his steps found firm footing, his gaze jumped and swirled. His attire and posture were well kempt. Small feathers lined the plunging neckline of his tunic. They looked like little red teeth at her distance. Krona was sure his morning attire was not chosen out of jest or disrespect, and he wore no jewelry that she could see. No opals. The grief appeared to be genuine. He approached the display case farthest from her, then wove in and out of the tall podiums that held the items at eye level, studying each artifact in detail without really seeing any of them at all. "How may I aid you?" Krona asked when he came near, aware that her oversized helm and androgynous uniform often made her a daunting figure to the public, noble or otherwise. His gaze trailed away from the misshapen globe, falling on the rounded dark berry-colored glass of her visor. The rims of his eyes were as red as his formal coat. "There is no aid a regulator can give, unless you can turn back time." Far from sounding distant or removed, he sounded hot, intense, like a furnace. Like a coiled fever ran through him, and with one touch he could set the drapes on fire. "That is not aid anyone can give. The goddess Time insists on a steady course," she said softly, maintaining her authoritative posture. "Just as turning up the gas does not make it morning, so turning back the clock's hands does not make it yesterday," he said. Each word flaunted a biting edge. A servant carrying a tray of champagne flutes twirled by, pausing to offer the man a drink before whisking off again. With the many platters of exotic high-end foods waving about, Krona wished her sense of smell wasn't so muted by her freshly scrubbed helmet. The aroma of alcohol-washed metal rode above all else. She appreciated fine food and libations when she could get them, which, on her salary, wasn't often. The lavishness of the dresses and the decorations of the party, she could leave. The man refused the drink and looked as though he wished he'd been offered a soft bed and a long lie-down instead. "If I may be so bold," she said, "perhaps you would be better off in the lounge where it's quiet, instead of here with all the noise." A duet of violinists had just taken up the arboretum nook. The merry tune was not unpleasant, but it wasn't as soothing as a dark room. He smiled humorlessly to himself. The chief magistrate's speech is soon. I'd never hear the end of it if I took leave. Ah, a relative of tonight's honoree, then. He did look a touch like the magistrate. Same nose, similar hair and eyes. A Monsieur Ayandar, are you? He made no indication either way. Tell me about the brooch. I've never seen an enchanted ruby so big. Docent was not her favorite role, even though she didn't play it often, but at least he genuinely appeared interested. Easing herself between the pedestals, she waved a black-gloved hand at the case harboring the gold and ivory brooch. Nestled at its center was a gem of exceptional clarity, gazing out from behind the protective glass like a judgmental eye. 10.8 carat weight, containing 0.95 grams of despair. Nearly 20 times the legal limit. His eyes darted to the copper bracers inlaid with state-issued enchanted garnets and topaz. Yes, they're enchanted as well, she thought. One filled with courage and one with resolve. Nearly every gemstone could be enchanted to hold a specific emotion. The legal limit for your average emotion, yes, she said. Despair can be removed from a person as a therapy, but it is illegal for an enchanter to sell despair stones, as despair is an insidious emotion that can tell a person a multitude of lies. All despair stones are to be turned over to the government for safekeeping as soon as they are made. But this one was inlaid in a brooch. It was created by an imbued specifically as a tool for executing her revenge against the terrorists responsible for the council bombings 15 years ago. The ones who wanted all of the work camps closed. Her mother died in the evacuation. Trampled. Krona paused. This didn't seem like a good party story for a grieving man. I was still young at the time, but I remember. My father was in the north wing when it happened. He glanced toward the front of the conservatory, where the magistrate would make his speech. Please, continue. 3 men committed suicide while wearing the brooch. The imbued was apprehended before she could transfer it to a 4th victim. As though suddenly disinterested in jewelry, the man turned away, spinning like he was drunk. And this? He pointed at one of the more grotesque masks, asymmetrical, painted in mismatched colors. It was the countenance of a demon, maw wide, fangs long and thick. The jaw was crooked, as though broken, and 5 horns jutted out at odd angles from one another. 2 on its forehead, with the other 3 alternating down the side of its face. The teller had been a skilled artisan, no question about that. No matter how many times Krona looked at it, the thing still sent shivers through her core. Louis Charbon's mayhem mask, she said. Oh, the killer? Ludador's most disturbed mass murderer, yes. The mask's magnitude is unknown. It is illegal for anyone to ever put it on, to even score it, and its knowledge capacity is of the most sensitive rating, Tier 10. No one is quite sure how the death mask was even enchanted, given that the Tellator who is credited with its creation never had access to Charbon's body after he was hanged. Indeed, the enchanter was in an asylum at the time. And what knowledge does the mask preserve? How to kill? Krona had been called to a fair few scenes of violence in her 3 years as a regulator. Crimes of passion often took place around enchanted items, usually arguments over ownership rather than any sort of magically aided conflict, and in her opinion it took little skill to kill. No, not exactly. You see, it was Charbon's knowledge of anatomy that allowed him to dissect and rearrange the bodies as he did. His will to kill might very well be ingrained in his echo, but it was his intricate knowledge of the internal workings of a human, and his capacity to dismember a body just so, that Eric Matisse preserved. The man nodded as though considering this. He hemmed and hawed for a few moments, then blurted, "And which of these baubles would you say Magistrate Ayandar is most proud of?" Perhaps an innocent question, perhaps not. I don't know him personally, she said carefully. The man took a small, sliding step toward the brooch. New tears brimmed in the edges of his eyes, and he used his sleeve to dab at his nose. Surely it's not the ruby, he said, jaw clenched. The feelings of others never did interest him. Trembling fingers clenched and unclenched. Tell me, Regulator, where would you be the evening after your granddaughter's passing? At a gala? He reached for the glass. Monsieur, please move back. She put a warning hand on the hilt of her saber, simultaneously sucking in a reverb bead. I may have a problem, she murmured. Understood, chimed 3 replies in her ear. Monsieur Ayendar the Younger, for now she was sure, did not touch the case, but turned on her. Where would you be? He demanded. Would you make your son leave his child's side? Would you make him endure pleasantries for the sake of face? Krona's chest tightened, but it was not her place to inquire after, or, save the 5, make judgments about the chief magistrate's family. Monsieur! With a strangled sob, he skipped backward, toward another pillar. He likes the masks best. I know he does. The one with the fish, what's so dangerous about it? She caught sight of Trey moving in from the front, and Sasha walking stiffly from the other side of the collection, both dodging potted palms and guests alike. The mask belonged to Lord Biren. He was very skilled in opiate refinery, she said placatingly, taking Ayendar by the elbow. Please, monsieur, come away with me, to that seat just over there. He threw her off. No! If these trinkets mean more to him than my daughter, I shall examine them until I am content. His palm smacked against the case, leaving sweaty smears. Wishing the others would move faster, she unsheathed her saber. You know I am fully within the order of the law to remove you. So remove me, he shouted. Faces snapped in their direction, carrying various expressions from irritation to interest. Do you want to cause a scene? A scene? He scoffed, feigning scandalization. I resent the idea that I would in any way desire to disrupt the magistrate's perfect evening. How may we be of aid? Trey asked as he and Sasha drew up on the opposite side of the pillar. In contrast to the frills, alternating high-low collars and soft lines of the attendees' clothing, Regulator uniforms were simple yet imposing. The 3 of them looked like black pieces from an artisan chessboard. Tall, wide helms, roomy enough to accommodate an enchanted mask beneath, the one wasn't always worn, spanned shoulder to shoulder, making the Regulators look like necklace, faceless, multi-horned beasts. Long leather coats gave them strong box-like proportions, and many Regulators, like Krona, chose to bind their chests beneath. The coat topped a pair of umanori, which made for easy movement and encompassed knee-high boots with thick-heeled soles. The only snatches of color on the uniform belonged to their bracers, faceplates, and weaponry. Oh yes, helpful, aren't you? Monsieur Ayendar spat. Make sure no one's smile cracks, make sure no one has a pout or scuffs a shoe or breaks a nail. He babbled on, all the while holding the glass case between his palms. Monsieur, I believe you've indulged in too much this evening, Sasha said, grabbing one wrist and wrenching it behind his back. Unhand me, he shouted. The guests' casual glances had turned to stares, and the natural, joyous flow of the room had halted. Unhand me! Unhand me! He continued to shout as Trey took his other arm. The 2 Regulators dragged him in reverse, but he lashed out with his feet before they could put any distance between the grieving man and the collection. A flailing boot caught the upper portion of the pillar, sending it off balance. Krona's heart leapt as she lunged for the mask case. The stand toppled away, beyond her reach. A resounding crash brought even the violinist's music to an end. And that's where I'll stop for now. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the reading, and I hope you enjoy The Helm of Midnight when you get your hands on a copy. I also wanted to share with you the map inside. I actually based it on a real place, even though it's the Helm of Midnight, the 5 Penalties series, it's all secondary world fantasy. No place in it is real, but I based the map on a real place. So kudos to you if you can guess where that is. It's pretty neat. I think it's pretty neat anyway. I think the whole book is pretty neat, and hopefully the whole series will be pretty neat as well. Thanks again for listening. Remember to pick up a copy of The Helm of Midnight out Tuesday, April 13th, 2021. I'm sure I will see you back here for another reading or maybe a Q&A about the world of Arkansas. We'll see. Thanks again. See you soon.